Parallel to its policy on war, the government places emphasis on finding political means to end the conflict, proposing to fully implement the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which revolves around the devolution of power to the provinces, is one way the government is looking at to address the conflict. In our next report, we take a critical look as to whether the proposed implementation is adequate to solve the country's problems. On the 21st and 22nd of November 2008, the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute was the venue for a two-day national seminar on the 13th Amendment. Organized by the National Integration Program Unit, the seminar attempted to critically examine the 13th Amendment from different viewpoints. The event was significant as it comes at a time when the devolution of power has gained precedence with the government. Contributing to the discussion were prominent academics and political think tanks, such as Professor Sumana Siriliyanage, who presented a reformist perspective on constitutional reforms.
Since the late 1980s, there has been a general consensus that the second Republican Constitution enacted in 1978 and the state structure set up by it should be replaced by a new constitution based on a new set of principles. It has also been emphasized that a legal foundation for a new state structure that is radically different from the state structure exists since 1948 should be laid. But in the last 10 years or so, pendulum has swung in favor of the anti-power sharing opinion. And this political shift was reflected in the results of the presidential election held in November 2005. As far as constitutional changes are concerned, the negotiation space appears to be shrunk in the last 3 years. Nevertheless, as Edrisinghe notes, I quote, constitutional reform is destined to remain at the forefront of Sri Lankan politics for several years to come.
Professor Gamini Keeravalla spoke on the origins of the 13th Amendment and its political context.
Most prevalent perception relating to the 13th Amendment was that it was an externally engineered one. Other element of this ideological volley is the creation of a phobia that political space created by the provincial councils can and will be manipulated by subnational groups for their secessionist goals. They allege India has long-term plans to balkanize Sri Lanka, and the Indian cohesive diplomacy in 1987 in planting provincial council system in Sri Lanka was the first step in that direction. When we trace the chain of dramatic events soon before the 13th Amendment, it is clear that immediate compulsion for President Jayawardena to make a breakthrough to have 13th Amendment was the Indian pressure. And we call it Paribu diplomacy.
The main concern of the minority communities in relation to the 13th Amendment was that the proposed devolution of powers wasn't substantial and therefore it cannot effectively address the grievances and aspirations of the people.
It's not the case.
Professor Keitha Ponkalan's presentation centered on the sentiments of the Tamil community towards the amendment to devolve power.
Survey of Tamil reaction to the 13th Amendment indicate they had 4 concerns. The first one was inadequate powers. The second concern was the central government's ability to take back the powers devolved. And the third concern was the lack of true will in the part of the government to devolve power and implement it. And fourth was the consultation problem. It's because of the basic mistrust between the Sinhalese and the Tamils. the Tamils always believe that they should have a sustainable and a system of devolution, because Tamils always point out that the Sinhalese could not trust on any agreement, because whatever is signed could be withdrawn.
The provincial council elections in the Eastern Province was conducted on the 10th of May 2008, following a lapse of 20 years based on the recommendations made by the experts panels of the APRC. People in the East cast their ballot with hope that a satisfactory devolution of power would be granted for the administration of their province. However, this doesn't seem to have happened according to Mr. Amiruddin, a member of the Eastern Provincial Council.
Council has been established after 20 years to meet the aspiration of the people who has been suffering for more than 2 decades. And again, he has to satisfy the central government. He has to satisfy the central government. If they are not doing the job by the instruction given by the minister or ministry, then again they are in the dilemma now. They don't know what to do. They don't know how they can resolve this whole kind of problem. That is there now. So that is also a problem now. So it means they are getting the double orders. What it means? They are getting the double order. So the aspiration of the affected people is still being denied. But we are exercising is there. Whatever thing is happening there, the people, whatever decision we are making, the cabinet making, is going to the governor's office, not for the information. So normally what we are, whenever you are writing the things, you have to put the note under the knee saying that, for information please. What is happening over there, they are sending to the governor's office for your consent please.
Since its introduction to Sri Lankan constitution through the Indo-Lanka Accord 20 years ago, attempts by successive governments to fully implement the 13th Amendment have been largely unsuccessful. The driving force behind the opposition it faced was the belief that it would lead to the separation of the country. Today, political parties in the APRC have been able to reach a consensus that power devolution will be a catalyst in the efforts to resolve the ethnic problem. As the government endeavours to implement the 13th Amendment, there remains a common feeling that though it may be an initial step towards achieving a new covenant between the communities in conflict, the proposed devolution is not substantial enough, and it will not be a final solution to the national problem.
Muslim regional unit. We have to seek it in a new political imagination. The 13th Amendment, with all its limitations, seems to provide some impetus for such a search. It seems that inventing a new constitution that enshrines multi-ethnicity, pluralism, power sharing, and regional autonomy can provide at least a framework of civic bonding. In the absence of anything else, we seem to invite the Constitution to be the bedrock on which a new post-Civil War political society can and ought to be built in Sri Lanka.